Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, I know you don't normally see my face on these forecast videos, but I was talking to Matt Reardon, my colleague and friend, about the videos. He says, "Hey, why don't you put your face on some of these videos?" And I said, "Well, I've been doing these videos since you were in college. I was once his professor, and I started them about 13 years ago. In fact, about 13 years ago was when my son was born. This is his soccer club shirt that I typically wear every morning when I'm doing my forecast videos. Anyways, Matt said, "Why don't you show your face?" And I'm like, "All right, whatever. We'll put it on here." So if you ever want to know what I look like, this is what I look like. I'm just a chubby dad in his basement forecasting the weather for you, okay? Now, I do need to wear the jacket this morning here because if you take a look at my first map, we've had some pretty chilly air that's moved through the midsection of the country. I live right here in Illinois, East Central Illinois, just near Champaign, and we've seen a temperature drop here of over 20 degrees since yesterday. This is this front sagging through. Now, this front is going to linger right in through this area, and we're going to watch again for more severe storms and flooding on the southern side of it. But I wanted to point out that this drop in temperature throughout parts of Michigan specifically brought in some pretty cold air this morning. And that was where we had our kind of local area of high pressure. It sat right over the Great Lakes. You can kind of see the air exhausting at the surface out of that high pressure cell, which sat here. But overall, pretty light winds, clear skies, just as a recipe for rapid radiational cooling overnight. Now I'm going to show you the actual temperatures there this morning, which kind of gave us this frost event, but I want to tell you something bigger. The main frontal boundary, which has now slid farther to the south right in through here, is still being fed by a lot of Gulf moisture in this area. So this discussion about flood threat on this part of the Red River and surrounding areas is going to continue. We're going to watch this moisture move all the way up into the northeast here very, very soon too. But real quick, I do want to pull up just the latest surface observations. So get yourself oriented here. This is part of Ontario. There's Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, and you can see Michigan tucked in between. We did notice that this morning just had a sunrise. We had we had some temperatures 30. I got a 27 here, or 25. So we did get down into that frost layer. Now it's not our frost level. Excuse me. It's pretty common to have frosts there this time of year. Had it been a little windier, we could have got the advantage of the warmer lakes, right? So that would have blown that warmer air off the lakes, stirred things up a bit more in the lower atmosphere, and prevented this. But as it stands, we did get some pretty chilly air into that place last night. Okay, so at 5:55 this morning, the all hazards map shows the freeze warning and the frost advisories that were around it. But a lot of focus is going to be on the precipitation patterns because we need to talk about who's going to be opening up windows to get things planted and who's going to be dealing with just excessive amounts of precipitation. There's going to be some benefit to it, but I think overall it's going to be detrimental to a few places down here to the south, where even this morning we do have the severe thunderstorm watches out. A couple of these storms are pretty potent this morning down here coming out of Texas into southern parts of Oklahoma. Now, yesterday's severe weather reports looked something like this. We saw 629 total reports, most of which were wind over here in parts of Illinois, Indiana, then definitely into parts of Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York. Some pretty potent storms came through, but you can see where the tail end of that front still lingers down here, where we had even more hail in parts of Texas. I was watching it on satellite. A couple of neat things about this satellite animation. We can see the upper level low that's creating this. And this is going to be a common theme, getting these weaker lows that maybe come through California and sit here while broader ridging takes over across the rest of the country. Matt and I have been kind of addressing that this week. But there's your lingering boundary. It's right in through there. And we can see the big storms that came out of parts of the Ohio Valley into parts of the Northeast last night as well. A couple of other things to point out. There was another dust storm. Down here we had a big one on Sunday. This one's much smaller down here coming out of Mexico, New Mexico, and far western Texas. And it's kind of neat to see the sunset here. A couple of things. The angle, right, is getting greater, meaning that we're just rapidly gaining these daylight hours in the northern hemisphere. We're approaching our solstice, which is just it's about 50 days away, I think, to the summer solstice. Then what's also neat is you can actually see the Gulf Stream right there. So when the sun sets, we flip over to, infrared imagery, and it pops out pretty well. Now, at the end of this video, we're going to talk again about ocean temperatures and what I want you to be watching during this month of May that we're about to start here. So we're going to get into that in just a few seconds. But I wanted to pull up a sequence of maps on recent precip just to kind of look at the nation and see where our heaviest rains have been. So this is our last 24 hours. And just to point out, we did, out of those storms, pick up 1 to 3 inches of rain, a couple places even more than that right into this area. If you just add another 24 hours onto it, take a look at the heavy rains that move through parts of, for example, the Red River Valley, the northern one, into parts of northern Minnesota. This was needed rain. It's stopping them from doing a lot of field work and planting right now, but the benefit hydrologically, I think, is huge. We then look out there, that's a 72-hour. Then I have 7-day, 14-day. And what I'm mostly worried about is where we've had all of this excessive rain and what's coming back into this area very, very soon. So we need to talk about that. Soil moisture-wise, we're saturated here down to about 16 inches. And so this is an area where flooding is going to be very easily accomplished. We've also brought up our soil moisture values here, but just take a look at how the Dakotas are split. You know, we go from, on this part of the Missouri River, dry, then wet, then dry again. And Nebraska has been a spot that has been routinely missed. I pulled up some data just yesterday for Kearney again, which is right on I-80 right here, south central Nebraska. They were at 39% of normal rainfall. These soil moisture deficits need to come up as well. So do the ones that are down here in parts of the Cornbelt. Florida's been extremely dry due to the big protective subtropical ridge that is sat there. And we can watch the drier conditions run up the East Coast into the mid-Atlantic as well. But tucked in between, we've had some very heavy rainfall. All right. So thinking this through, let's go ahead and have a look at what our next 10 days holds. We will be getting some more snow in the Sierra Nevada. Okay, we are going to watch a cutoff low sit and spin, opening up Gulf moisture to a broad section of the southern plains, which we've been talking about all week. Remember that even though this is late April, early May precipitation, in the southern plains, due to summer temperatures, soil types, the hydrology of the region, even if you're wet in one season, you can go immediately over to dry later. And we're still concerned about that. That's still a possibility in the southern plains. I'll kind of make a case for what that might look like as I approach the end of this forecast video. I also just, want to make a strong point here. Someone asked me this the other day, and I went and looked it up because it's a good question. Does a wet spring guarantee a hot, dry summer? Now, the guy that asked me that was from Texas. Does a wet spring guarantee a hot, dry summer? So I went and I looked at that southern U.S. region right there in the south central U.S., and I tried to correlate, going back to 1895, the precipitation patterns in spring versus summer, and the correlation is 0, which means you can't use what happened in one season to predict the next. All right, so just something to think about there. So that's our next 10 days. Now, look, we're going to open up some wide windows for planting opportunities here. And the moisture that's coming into this area is coming right now. It's the next 36 hours. And after that, we're going to really dry that out. We need to see this moisture come through this part of the mid-Atlantic, up into the northeast as well. I am continually concerned about the dryness that's in the southeast. The system coming through California again, it's another late push of moisture into the Sierra Nevada, which are already sitting at pretty good snowpack, and the whole state of California is about 120% of its historical average on reservoirs right now. So week 2, that was 10 days. Now let's just look at day 8 through 14. And there you can see it. We've got a low that's going to be here. There's going to be another one that's sitting over there, but a broader ridge over the top of these two things. So they're going to be cut off to the south. And that's going to leave a large area with much more favorable both temperature and precipitation patterns to get a crop established. And it's going to go in quick, I think, in these areas. Now, all 14 days together, this is what it looks like. So European ensemble 14-day precipitation anomaly map. And I just want to point out, we've got a big section of the central and western Corn Belt that looks relatively, dry going forward. So I pulled up some point data from Des Moines just to get a good sense of this. And over the next 15 days, I've got them at 0.37 inches. And most of that's coming in the next 7 days. Most of it's coming Thursday night and Friday, excuse me. And after that, we're kind of flatlining on the precipitation through, all the way to May 14th. Temperature-wise, you don't see any massive swings. They're going to keep mostly their soil temps above 50, especially during the afternoon. The range is 46 to 76. I've got their temperature range from 44, which is this cool morning this morning. They might get cool again this weekend, but jumping back up to highs approaching 80. Excuse me. And I've got them grabbing 161 GDDs in these next 15 days too. So if you get something on the ground, it's going to emerge pretty quickly with this upcoming pattern. So back to the precipitation side of it. 10-day probability staying on the drier side of average. Okay, so this is staying below a ½ inch. So if you see white, this is where we've got wet conditions. But just take a look. Most of the Canadian prairie, through Montana, the Dakotas, Nebraska, big section of the upper Midwest. And the moisture that's coming through here is coming right now. So it's going to be a relatively near-term thing. Even though there's some scattered convection going on down in southern Georgia and Florida, I've got it drier there. But you can tell how far back to the west we've pushed the dry line, and it continues to stay in that vicinity as we go forward here. On the wetter side of it, sure, we got a new model run in. Yeah, let me go back and flip this back for you real quick. So the 0Z runs out 15 days. The 6Z, which it keeps switching to because of the time I record, only goes out 144 hours on the Euro. So this is a probability of 2 inches. And if I step this up to 4, again, we're watching for some very heavy rainfall in this particular corridor, and also with the other low that's going to be spinning up here very soon. So we need to just look at both of those. I really like the way the artificial intelligence has picked up on this pattern. I think it's gotten into a good groove this spring. And I'm going to take you back and show you what I'm watching. Okay, so this is through this evening. So there's the trough that's kicking off the severe weather that's going to run along that boundary. I'll show you the severe weather in a second. And then we see the reinforcing shot of some cooler air. We're going to talk about that potential for some cold here on Saturday morning, Sunday morning. And then there they are. There's our 2 lows. 1, 2, and the jet is way up here. So the question is, how far to the south are these lows going to sag? Okay, and if they do, that will redistribute some of the precipitation. But as I see it right now, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, the dominant one is going to be this one, as the first one gets kind of absorbed into the flow going into the northeast. Now watch as we get into week 2 though, okay? So this is now out there next Wednesday, and that low sags right down here, and the models are attempting to take a large ridge and leave a low to the south of it. So this is what we call a high over low pattern. Matt brought it up yesterday. I was tweeting about it. It's a pattern, it's a type of blocking pattern, okay, if it gets stuck. Now, this particular one, I don't think is going to get stuck. I think it's just there for maybe 3, 4, 5 days, and then it's out. Because as we notice in the AI model, they're trying to drop in by, Tuesday the 13th, a deep low coming through Utah, Wyoming, Colorado. And what I'm concerned about with this low is what it could do to front range precipitation and storms. And then can it just waft up a lot of moisture farther back? I don't know if waft is a word for this, but just bring it back up into the northern plains. All right, so that's what we're going to think about. Now, this is a single model run. It's not an ensemble. They are running the artificial intelligence in an ensemble mode. I believe they are. I don't think I have access to it just yet. But I want to show you what the ensemble European model is doing. It's also got a trough here. Okay, there is the ridge. There's the cutoff low. So this is consistent, and so does the GFS. In fact, the GFS ensemble even has a deeper trough in here. So I want to be watching that late week 2 time frame in this vicinity. Okay, we'll come back to that in a second. In the near term, severe weather threat today. We've already got the storms going, so we're just going to watch this part of Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas. We could get some storms up farther north, Missouri, southern Illinois, Indiana again. Then tomorrow, we see it kind of stretch out again from like Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, all the way down here to almost Austin, Texas. Very long area along that frontal boundary where you could see those storms. And then we take a look at day 3, and just a broader area where the front sags across the country before the next cutoff low comes in. So the storms early this morning are firing right here. So this is a look at some live lightning data. Some are coming through Missouri, and the rest are coming through Oklahoma and Texas. And I'm going to just focus in on that area using the high-resolution rapid refresh model starting about 7 a.m. Pretty good initialization if you just use the radar as our point of reference. And what we're going to be paying attention to today is the potential for these storms to kind of line out. See that? This is by this afternoon and this evening. It looks to be a pretty dangerous squall line going through parts of eastern Oklahoma, eastern Texas into Arkansas. This will be up to about 6 o'clock tonight Central Time. Could get more storms on the backside, scattered storms to the north of it, also up here in Colorado. But we're going to watch those press east over the Mississippi Valley by the time we get into the very early morning hours on Thursday. Now, do these just feed into the moisture that's farther to the south? I think they do. That's what squall lines like to do. They just kind of open themselves up and feed into their most unstable and highest moisture regions because they're just outflow driven. And that one's going to just dive down, it looks like, all the way to the Gulf Coast. So that's just a quick look at that one isolated area as to where we're going to be paying attention to the severe storms. Outside of that, we can kind of just get a broader sense here of the what's going on elsewhere. And we do see that as we get out there, we have a deeper low that's rolling through the Midwest. And on the northern side of this in Ontario, some snow may be getting up here there ahead of Minnesota. But that's the low we're thinking about, okay? So that's just a quick look at things. Let's kind of broaden this out and see the bigger picture. Next 7 days, again, my big focus is on where the rain isn't and where the rain is. And I see a pretty large corridor. Sorry, it looks like one of my computers just restarted behind me. But a pretty large corridor in through here of drier conditions. Same thing for pockets of the southeast. And then we note that this region is just expected to be extremely wet out of this, as will parts of the mid-Atlantic getting into the northeast. Now, I want to take a deeper dive into this really quickly, and we're going to compare some models. I want to point out again that lately, I want to thank Dr. Maui for giving this to me, the European model's dropping in its skill score, but it remains much higher than the much more volatile GFS. And Matt and I were talking yesterday, and I look forward to talking with Andrew Pritchard about this too. What's going on with the GFS right now, kind of maintaining these much lower skill scores? We need to see if it's maybe a data assimilation issue or something, but it's really fallen off track here. But I want to compare them because I want you to see the differences here. So GFS left, European right. Now let's get just a sense of the timing of these systems. So this is through Wednesday night, getting out through Thursday morning, afternoon, and evening. I look at this and see some consistencies overall in what the models are attempting to do, but they start to fall apart after this. That's Friday evening, Saturday morning. Now look at that. The GFS much farther, much quicker with the progression of the front. The European leaves it lingering. It's mainly due to the position of two different high pressure cells, one to the north and one out over the open Atlantic. And the GFS is just quicker with the progression of that low. But as we continue to play it forward, we'll watch this difference really manifest itself over some drier regions like in the southeast. So I'm going to favor the European, partly because we need this rain to get into the southeast, but also because I think it's just performing better at the speed of this current system. Then after that, another system comes into the west. There's the snow that I mentioned coming into the Sierra Nevada. I mean, there could be another 5, 10, 15 inches of snow out of this in the Sierra Nevada. And then we watch that low emerge and take a look at this. By next Tuesday, European bringing this rain right up the front range. The GFS jumps it out. See that? The European has the lingering moisture here. It's gone in the GFS. And you have to just say, all right, which model's been performing better? We'd have to favor the Euro. But these differences are going to be huge. I mean, if I was in Colorado looking at a forecast right now for next Tuesday, I'd be looking at mountain snow and some heavy rains out in the high plains, and then the GFS would be like, no, it's clear. It's all out in Kansas, Nebraska, and all the way down to Oklahoma and Texas. So much different solutions here we need to pay attention to. And that's going to affect the speed of all of this. And what you notice, look at that. I'm just going to start again. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. This is the effect of a cutoff low here and a cutoff low there. See them? They're just kind of punching into this while this broader ridge comes over the top, leaving this whole region dry and ready to go. I mean, multiple days of dryness in that area. So if we compare models, it's a bit maddening, right? That's a 10-day forecast from the European. Now, you pick your spot. I'm going to pick Colorado today. Look at the difference. That's the Euro. This is the AI model. And then this is the GFS. So 0.53 inches here versus 2.73 versus 3.42. Now, again, we've been focusing on this area and this area, and remembering that a lot of what you see coming through here is happening very soon, followed by a longer stretch in this whole corridor of drier, almost ideal planting conditions in that area. But I just wanted you to see these model forecasts and compare them. Now, down to that flooding area, I just want to point out May 7 and 8, the CPC does have out a moderate risk for heavy precipitation in the southern plains. So this is all a part of that next system. But I would just, I don't work for the CPC, but I would just modify this. I think it's back further as well, that we could be running the risk of some heavy rains. We'll just see. We'll see what they continue to evolve in their forecast. Okay, let's already looked at the week 2 precip. So let's go out and talk about frost now. This is just an updated map on the probability of having your last spring frost. That's a temperature below 32 after today. So it's important to note that where we had the frost and freeze warnings this morning, there's generally a 50 to 80, almost 90% chance of still having a frost after today here. But this line is moving north very, very rapidly. And this is what the actual frost threat looks like over the next 7 days, remembering that we just had this one here this morning. Okay, there's nothing really uncommon about the map you're looking at here. So if we take a look at what the temperatures are, this is today's forecast highs. Getting into Thursday, look how warm it is in the northwest. Warmth going over the eastern Cornbelt here. Then we get into Friday, just rain-cooled air. That's what's going on here. Colder air sags over the Great Lakes on Saturday morning. We're going to take a look at these low temperatures there Saturday and Sunday. And then much warmer in the northern plains while this deeper low comes through California into the southwest. So this is all cloud cover and rain-cooled air in this area. Remember, this is when we're getting some of that snow in the Sierra Nevada. So this is now Monday into Tuesday, and that is all due to that upper level low that's sitting and spinning there. Now, I mentioned some colder air. This is Sunday morning's lows. So again, we're just down here according to the National Digital Forecast Database. Again, watching out for the patchy frost in this area, but overall, just a cool morning this upcoming Sunday. Okay, bigger picture. I like coming back to the matrix here of temperatures. Once again, I just see the risk on the cooler side down here where the cutoff low is going to live. That's kind of in all the models. We're going to be picking up some pretty good heat, I think, for much of the country going forward in this forecast. Very limited chances of some sustained colder air outside of those areas I just highlighted. So that kind of brings me to the precipitation discussion. The CFSV2 has bounced all over the place. If you could have seen it yesterday versus today, it's got an entirely different story. This is now the mid-May, so May 14 to May 20 outlook. Still wet south, wet up the plains, but drier around the Great Lakes, Central Corn Belt. And then you notice the end of May, it's got this whole area drier. Now, Matt and I were talking yesterday, and I look forward to conversing with Andrew about this later. There is a signal, a possibility, based off of some sort of cyclical behavior I think we found, that maybe the end of May turns stormy again. But I have such low confidence in it, I don't know what to tell you. To be honest, I'm finding myself biting more into what the European model's saying for the month of May, and it's right here. Digging in, Matt talked about this yesterday, this much lower pressure into the Gulf of Alaska is going to be key. It's key for now. It's going to be key for summer. That cannot ignore that. I'll come back to that in a second. But I generally see higher pressure here, and I see that the Bermuda high, okay, is sending its highest anomalies over toward Iceland and it's over toward Ireland and the British Isles. And so why I'm talking about this is because if this goes on repeat in June or July or August, and we get this wafting, there it is again, that word, if we get this motion of the Bermuda high shoving itself off to the North Atlantic, that's wrong. That's going to be tough for places in the central U.S. to be able to recover rainfall. So if we just zoom in on the central U.S., we notice that most of the next 30 days, high pressure occupies this area of the country. And as a result, the precipitation pattern is going to look something like this. Now, you know that most of this is coming in the next 2 weeks. Okay, we talked about that low. We mentioned open planting windows. We know that this is coming in the next 2 weeks as well. The question is, does this just continue for a lot of May? And what typically happens is we love it till we get the crop established, and then once it's in the ground, we're like, all right, get it out of the ground, give us some water back. And I'm worried that we could get into a longer stretch in May of some drier conditions. Now, I keep hinting at what the factors might be longer term with that. And I'm going to tell you something again. We've got to pay attention to these ocean temperatures. Now, when you look, I wanted to show you the 7-day change here, and I wanted to compare it to the, to the global average. There's a couple of important things here when you look at the anomalies when compared to the global average. First, the Atlantic in this area, on average, this is like more than 2 degrees colder than where it was a year ago at this time. I mean, it's much, much cooler. That's going to affect the hurricane season coming up. But I am mostly watching this area. We call it the negative PMM. And then we're going to watch this area, the negative phase of the PDO, Pacific Decadal Oscillation, Pacific Meridional Mode. And you know this one, we call it ENSO, which is El Nino in the Southern Oscillation, or El Nino La Nina. Okay, story here is going to be about where we have to pay attention to in summer. There's so much attention given to El Nino La Nina, yet the correlation with the ocean temperatures there and the precipitation patterns across the U.S. is much weaker in summer, not winter, but in summer, than they are here and here. That's the two spots we have to watch. At the same time, Matt talked about the Pacific warm pool. Did you guys like that? I told you it's going to be good. If this goes cool, this goes cool, that goes cool, and this goes cool. That is a recipe for a stagnant jet stream pattern in summer with warmth tucked into the middle of this. It tends to produce a big ridge here, which produces a big ridge there, and produces the Bermuda Highway over here. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. So what do we need to watch? Well, let's go look at these two regions, PDO, PMM. The Pacific Decadal Oscillation, we've been measuring it since the late 1800s. The cold phases, when the Gulf of Alaska is cold, are in negative, and the warm phases are in positive. And this is where we currently stand. Let's just zoom in here at the end. We're here, and we're curious. Does it kind of do one more dip down? It's a decadal oscillation, which means it tends to be up for 5 years and down for 5 years, and we're at the tail end of that 5-year time period. Incidentally, if we just kind of let me just refresh the page here to get back out to the full view of it. There we go. If I show you a bit more of the time series, the last time we were at the end of a decadal oscillation was, 11, 12, 13. See the rebound coming up here? Then it was warm, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and then we've come back down into it again. So we think hard about this because of this. If you correlate July and August precipitation patterns with the PDO, now I know this, I've left the color bar this way. There's a positive correlation with precipitation and the positive phase of the PDO. But we're on the negative, which is why we need to see these warmer colors as greater risk of dryness. And this is just another piece to the puzzle for why we think this area could struggle with consistent rains during summer. I didn't say it's not going to rain, but just consistent rains. It's also why all of the forecast models tend to be wet down here. That PDO is critical. The other side of it is the PMM, the Pacific Meridional Mode. And I'm going to tell you, June is the month. Watch it May. If the temperatures there drop off dramatically in June, again, if you're lost again, I'm talking about this area. Wait, I blew that up. That area right there. Okay? If we need to watch this carefully because take a look. Remember some of my analog years, like 1999. Then we come over here to 2006, 2008. And then we've got also 2011 and 12. And all of these years were cold, negative PDO. And a year ago we were there, and we're just curious, is this a year where this comes back down into this area for 2025 in June? If it does, it's another signal towards central U.S. issues with heat and less consistent rains. I don't want to just keep throwing out the word drought because in my brain, when I say drought, I think of like Dust Bowl. Careful, we got to be careful with that. What I really want to say is inconsistent sporadic rainfall. All right, that's the meteorological way of cheating with verbiage to tell you that there's uncertainty in the rainfall coming into summer. So that just leaves me with one other thing I want to point out here. We are nearing the end of the Brazilian monsoon, so we're starting to see this dry out naturally. Take a look, though. There's some much needed rain in the forecast models over the next 10 days hitting Paraguay, northern Argentina, and Rio Grande do Sul. That's been an area of drought development. So we're starting to see that. There's more consistent rains coming across Europe right now as well as compared to some recent forecasts. And we're going to continue to monitor this kind of global picture of things going into the rest of spring. So we start a new month soon, and I'm looking forward to kind of the challenges that May can bring. But we'll pay attention to those ocean temperatures together. So that's it. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks.